If you can believe it, the Mariners still have a chance to make the playoffs. Plus, why they need to sign Cal Raleigh to an extension yesterday. That's all coming up on this episode of Bleav in Mariners. What is up, sports fans? Do not want to delay. Let's get right into it. We have got a very special guest on today's program, a great interview that I taped with T, the creator of East Coast M. So we'll get right into that interview. Schultz here, Jordon Schultz, a Pacific Northwest talk show host from Portland, Oregon, on this episode of Bleav in Mariners, breaking down all things about their series against the Yankees. They were able to salvage a game there, so we'll get into that with East Coast M's, as well as talk about why he and I both think that the Mariners need to get Cal Raleigh signed to an extension yesterday. So here's that interview. All right, joining us now on Bleav in Mariners, he is one of the smartest content creators out there when it comes to Seattle Mariners stuff on social media, on YouTube, on Twitter. He's actually got a thriving X page. It's stacked with heavily researched facts and statistics, and also a very entertaining YouTube channel as well. Every fan of the Mariners should be watching. It's T, creator of East Coast M's. What's going on, man? Dude, nice to finally talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I admire your work, and I really appreciate all the great content that you put out, and for coming on to my little podcast over here. How you doing, T?
Absolutely, I'm doing good. How about you, man?
I'm good. Coming off of, we are taping this fresh after the Mariners win on Thursday against the Yankees, so salvaging 1 out of 3, and they did it after scoring some early runs. So I'm feeling pretty good, like a lot better than I was the last 2 days. And actually, maybe before we get into what you said about Cal Raleigh earlier this week, want to talk about your point that he is one of the best catchers overall in Major League Baseball. I agree with you on that. I don't want to challenge you. I want to give you the platform to tell Mariners fans and Major League Baseball fans why, because I think because of his batting average, he gets a little, kind of forgotten about in the likes of the Adley Rutschman and Salvador Perez's of the world. And I understand, but you brought some stats to the table to highlight that. But really, I guess the best part to start with would be the Mariners' recent success, but kind of the up and down that we've been feeling the last month or so. How have you been dealing with that? I feel like every time the Mariners are just about to go out or have no shot at the playoffs, they do just enough to stay there. And as we tape this now, 2 games behind the Twins, technically 3 because they don't hold the wild card in the AL wild card tiebreaker. But I do want to know how you're feeling, because it seems like Jekyll and Hyde every day with this.
Yeah. I mean, it was reaching to that point where we're all kind of like, the season's over, there's no shot. And then we finally get to the point where we're like, all right, they're starting to get hot a little bit. And that's one thing they really haven't been able to do so far this year, is really go on one of those big hot streaks that we've seen, like last year where they went on, 14 games in a row or something crazy.
Yeah.
16, something crazy before the All-Star break. That's kind of one thing that we've been lacking this year. We really haven't had like a massive, crazy hot streak. Obviously, the offense has improved a lot, which is awesome to see. I mean, it's not painful to watch every single day, day in and day out. But definitely still some improving. I think there's a lot of things that this offseason they really need to hone in on to really just not have to be in the situation every year where we deal with, all right, we have a little bit of a lead, and then, the Astros come in, they take it from us. And then, the last 10 games, we're sweating it out to see if we can actually make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired. Like, I enjoy, fans like in the chase at the end of the season. I like that feeling, but I would like to, that 10-game lead that we had in June as Mariners fans was pretty nice to sit on. And pretty much since 2001, there hasn't been a feeling of comfort for Mariners fans. And I was very young, so I didn't really understand that was like one of the only times that had ever happened. And I am begging now, 20 years later, for that to happen again. And you're right. Yeah. So many moves that did need to be made last offseason that weren't, that, hopefully they'll actually make this offseason. But one of the moves that they do probably need to make in the next offseason or two is something that I want to start talking to you about. And that is the contract situation of Cal Raleigh and signing him to an extension. Cal Raleigh has been, in my opinion, one of the sneakily best catchers overall in the majors right now, even though he's batting in the 210s. But you brought some stats to the table earlier this week in a great tweet and YouTube video that I just kind of want you to lay out, like, why Cal Raleigh overall is one of the best catchers despite his batting average in Major League Baseball.
Yep. So there's 2 things I kind of want to hone in on. So one is, catchers aren't supposed to hit for high average. That's never been a thing around catchers, is like, every catcher's got to go in and hit 350 every year, but, put out 15 home. Like, that's never been a thing. So kind of what Cal is doing with all the power, like we've seen, he's already set. He is about to break his own record that he set last year in terms of home runs in a season by a catcher in Mariners history. So that's just, catchers aren't meant to hit well. They're meant to be great defensively and then hit ninth. Like there's a lot of guys in terms of like Trevor Rogers that you see, I Bleav, is it Trevor Rogers or Spencer Torkelson? One of them is a catcher for which one is it?
Spencer Rogers. Torkelson's the kid back down in the minors.
He's right in the 9 spot. Like they don't expect him, they expect him to be a decent bat, but he's in the 9 spot. You have guys like Yainer Diaz, who's, they're anomalies in terms of like hitting for high average and decent power. But the one thing that I really want to focus on Cal, especially offensively and defensively, is just the way that he's improved year over year. So the one thing that you do, you look at his offense. We'll start with his offense. So in 2022, he hit 27 home runs, right? Over a year, he keeps at 30 home runs, and now he's at 30 home runs again with the possibility to beat that. In terms of RBIs, 63 in his first full year, then 75, then 93. So he's continuing to just get better and better and better. Defensively is another thing that really just keeps getting overlooked, to be honest, because a lot of his stats are just improving way more than you would even imagine. So in terms of innings, he sits anywhere between 1 through 5th year in terms of ranking. This year, he's first in terms of innings caught. Caught stealing, he's first, as we know. Home runs, he's first. And then two things that are kind of like you'd have to do a little bit more deeper diving to kind of understand a little bit. But there's this thing called FRV, which essentially takes in, everything a catcher has. So, outs above average, fielding, throwing, blocking, framing, everything a catcher has defensively. So he had an 8 FRV in his first full season back in 2022, which was 9th in all of baseball. And then in 2023, he was 7th. He had a 7 value, which was tied for 5th. And this season, he's up to 14. So he doubled that value in terms of defense, which is actually tied for 2nd. It might have changed the past few games, but I doubt it changes that frequently. And then in terms of framing, in his first year, he had an 8 value. So these are all StatCast values. He was tied for 5th. And then he actually got worse in 2023 in terms of framing. He was down to a 6 value, which was still tied for 5th in the league. And then this year, he is 2nd in all of baseball, up to a 12. So he's doubled his FRV and doubled his framing value in a year. So, I mean, these are just things that a lot of people kind of overlook. Like, you don't really, a lot of catchers can buy strikes, but he's doing it so frequently. And, one thing that I keep saying that stands out is someone like Patrick Bailey is one of the best, if not the best defensive catcher in all of baseball, like statistically speaking. But again, his bat isn't there. So, you have Cal, who's leading catchers in home runs, and then he's also leading in defensive stats too. So to me, I don't really think it can be much of an argument in terms that he's not the best catcher, but people will say otherwise.
Well, you make a great point about, what you can really see and quantify as just the general baseball fan, watching him throw out runners. That's a lot easier to all right, look at a catcher and say, hey, yeah, he's really good defensively. But the framing is something that is so good to look at, and something that even umpires, even though they deny that they aren't fooled by it, it is a very prominent part of today's game in Major League Baseball. Yeah, so yeah, the umpires with that bullshit can get out of here saying that they're not affected by it. They are, and you're right. Cal is very good at it, and it's nice to see it, especially with a catcher, a position that's not really a hitting position traditionally in baseball. You're getting 30+ home runs out of your catcher. That is amazing. And I mean, we can talk about like a whole other subject of him having to put the team on his back. I feel like he would have a few more hits. He wouldn't be hitting 210 if he didn't have to put the team on his back, if there were maybe a little bit more protection in the lineup. But really good points that you highlight about the improvement of his stats over the last 3 seasons of his career. So with that rate of improvement, T, do you see Cal Raleigh like having a little bit more room to grow? I mean, he's still mid-20s. He's obviously not like, I would say, at his athletic prime yet, but he's already kind of near the top of like where traditionally guys like are in their careers overall. I'd be very happy with him hitting 30 home runs for the rest of his career. I mean, does that mean that he's got, a little bit more room to get better, or has he already hit his ceiling talent-wise? What do you think there?
I don't think he's hit his ceiling. I don't think it's also realistic for us to sit here and say, signing him to a 10-year deal is definitely ideal, just because he's a catcher. He catches so many innings every year. Maybe he can turn into a DH, a valuable DH, when he hits 35, 36. But I think a safe bet in terms of like an extension wise, you're talking about probably like 5 to 6 years, I think is realistic. Just because obviously catcher, you wear down. There's guys that I know. I used to play baseball, like I played in college. So there's a lot of guys that just wear down over time. So it's just something that you kind of have to consider. I mean, obviously he's an animal. I mean, he literally just catches every single day. I don't know how he does it. Especially because we don't really have a set in stone backup catcher like most teams do. So I think the safe bet is anywhere from 5 to 6 years in terms of
my gosh. He is like the most Iron Man of all of Major League Baseball players right now. Because catchers obviously I'd say usually the toughest guys on the team, because they, not only have to squat for so long, but just the physical position that you have to be in for that and then be ready to jump up from. I mean, just the things you have to do are not normal, like things that human beings usually do. Catchers are a whole different breed. And I agree that, yeah, the Mariners signing him to an extension would be very smart. But do you think the Mariners will be smart enough to actually do so? They've been very hesitant to spend money before. I mean, I heard Ryan Divish talking on Puck Sports on YouTube a couple of weeks ago saying that the Mariners could F up a cup of coffee. It's a true sentiment. And I guess, like, this is the most obvious thing, you know, in front of the Mariners, that, like, here's how you guarantee fans continuing to come to the ballpark and guarantee at least a little bit of success going forward. That would be to re-sign Cal Raleigh and keep him within your organization. He's been, you know, the gritty, true representation of what all Mariners fans want the team to be. But is the team going to bungle that? Like, I certainly hope not. Where are you sitting on that?
I mean, again, it kind of saying what you said about Divish. I did see that on the Marine Layer podcast. They kind of talked about, you know, what pitchers they're going to have to get rid of in the offseason. It's sad that it has to get to that point, to be honest, because we all know they bring in enough money. You see how many fans go there on a nightly basis, especially weekend series. They're almost sold out every time. So I think, in my opinion, there's the fan experience in terms of, you know, going to the ballpark, you know, doing the fireworks thing, all that stuff, which obviously has nothing to do with payroll. That's completely separate. That's all marketing stuff. But nonetheless, like, the biggest thing is, like, there's a large group in fan bases that just want to win. Like, we want, whatever you have to do, get us to the playoffs, get us to championships, get us to a world. Like, again, as a Mariners fan, like, you guys your patience is running out. Like, you know, we're the only team to not make it to a World Series. So how many more years are we going to keep going through this and kind of being like, oh, we almost made it? Or, you know, they basically just keep putting Band-Aids on the problems, essentially, to, you know, keep us involved, keep us in the playoff hunt. But, you know, again, in my lifetime, one playoff. That's it.
Yeah, in my lifetime, I mean, I'm 35. So technically, like, even though I wasn't rooting for the team until I was about 10, I've had basically the fourth. Yeah, the Mariners 2020 season was the fourth playoff appearance ever in my history, but I really only remember two, which was 01. And I mean, I guess kind of 2000 was kind of a good season, but, like, forgettable. But I didn't really start watching until 2001. So, and I feel like that's what a lot of current day Mariners fans, at least around maybe their 20s or 30s, kind of remember. So yeah, it's definitely torture. And I can't remember who put out this tweet. I think it was about a month ago, but it was a list of the Major League Baseball teams, all 30, and their spending percentage compared to what their revenue was. At the top was, and they did not order it by team revenue. They ordered it by percentage of team revenue spent. Yeah, on salary cap. And the Mets were at the very top with, I think it was something stupid, like 80 to 90% of their income is spent on their salary cap, which, you know, they want to win. Cohen came in, bought that team. It might be a crazy financier dude, but at least he wants to win. I think Mariners fans would welcome something like that, because they were near the bottom of that list at 40% of their profits every single year being spent on their salary cap only. And that, you bring up the marketing stuff, T, and it's a lot cheaper, obviously, to spend a couple $100,000 on fireworks shows a year, you know, bobbleheads, only for the first 20,000 fans, though, right? Not like the Dodgers do it, where it's literally like, hey, come to the stadium, you're going to get a t-shirt. But God, T-Mobile Park in 2024 is, oh, you got to show up early to get the damn bobblehead that maybe sort of looks like the player. So I feel the frustration there, and I guess I'm just trying to quantify, like, you know, this organization's terrible approach and unwillingness to spend money. And yeah, going forward, that's obviously, it's the reason why I ask if they're going to re-sign Cal or not. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a crappy position that they're in to have to trade a starting pitcher to get somebody else, but that's what they're going to have to do. But that's kind of even why I'm wondering about Cal as well. I'm concerned that they are going to have to trade a starting pitcher. They're going to have to trade a couple of other guys. You can't keep Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver both on the payroll next year. I'm not sure that Jerry DiPoto is willing to accept that Mitch Garver is a total bust, although in my opinion, that money's already been spent. $24 million's been sunk. It doesn't matter. Haniger, you can move on from, but they're going to have to do some serious tinkering if that's the plan, if they aren't going to increase payroll, if they want to keep Cal, because yeah, he's going to be only $4 or $5 million next year, but that's going to go to 10. That's going to go to 15 very quickly. And they've also got to make a decision on Randy Arozarena. So I guess I'm just confused, like, what the Mariners will actually do, and scared that they will screw this up with Cal.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Randy too, when you bring that up, like, that's another thing that it makes no sense. Like, you bring in a guy to make an impact at the deadline, which he has made an impact. I wouldn't say it's lived up to the hype, if that's a fair statement to say. But in terms of, like, you can't bring in a guy like that you expect, you have a future outfield. You have at least another 2 years of Randy, Julio, and Victor, right? So that's something that you can't really just throw away. Like you made these trades, you tried to bring in a guy that was an impact, and he's making an impact. He's getting more comfortable as you watch him. But in terms of that, it's just, you can't do something like that. You can't get rid of Randy Arozarena in this offseason. It doesn't make sense at all. You already have a set outfield for your next 2 seasons, and there's just no need to touch him.
No, it really would kind of go with the approach of Jerry Dipoto, throwing something against a wall, hoping it sticks. And then if it doesn't, in his opinion, he moves right on. It's weird. And that's been his approach with the offense. I totally agree. You can't do that. You've got to keep that outfield together into Arozarena, Julio Rodriguez, and Victor Robles. That has the combo going forward to be the best outfield in baseball if they're all playing at top clip. Speaking, though, of one of those guys, Victor Robles, we're talking with T. From East Coast M's. He is the content creator behind all of East Coast M's content on X, on YouTube. You can find him anywhere on the social media and the internets, but we got to talk about Victor Robles, T. We'll talk about Julio in a second because I guess the Victor Robles complete befuddling decision to steal home on a 3-0 count with 2 outs while Daddy Justin Turner is about to get on base and get a free run and set you up for possibly another one because Lucas Heel isn't throwing well. I mean, were you disgusted immediately when you saw it like I was? Or, I mean, were you just kind of hoping that like he could pull it off? Like, I mean, I guess you didn't really see it happening live, but like, I like the decision usually, but in that situation, just like everybody else is saying, you just can't do it. And I hated it. And my stomach just dropped through my feet.
Yeah. Oddly enough, though, he was closer than people thought. He almost got in there. Now, that being said, it was a very stupid play. I mean, you have a guy, he got hit by a pitch, 2 walks after that, and Justin Turner's in a 3-0 count. It's just not necessary. I love his aggressiveness. I mean, he's changed games by stealing second. What is he? I think he's 20 for 20 with the Mariners in stolen bases, and he has yet to get out from second to third. Like, he makes it look so easy. But I mean, in that situation, I think the moment just kind of got too big to him. He tried to make too much of an impact himself when he should have just been patient, just let it play out.
And then obviously the next day, like you think you'd seen it all, but Julio with, I mean, I guess you call it like a brain fart or I'm not sure you can call it not knowing the rules because he did say that he thought that the bat was the ball. So in his mind, it's not anything but a normal play where, you know, he can just kind of mosey around like he usually would and laugh and be Julio. So like if you are looking and you quickly think that's the ball, it is what it is.
Yep.
However, it's just, I mean, I tend to agree a little bit with people on social media that it is just absolutely unexcusable. But I mean, I don't know if you're on that side of it or if you're on the side of it with like people who just like, oh, well, he was just trying to get out of the way because he thought it was a ball. It is what it is.
And absolutely, he was clearly trying to get out of the way. I mean, that's just natural human instinct to kind of just jump out of the way, something like that.
Yeah.
But also, like, for the whole 15 steps he took after he got out of the way were very unnecessary. That was kind of just being lazy. And he probably wasn't paying attention clearly because he just kept walking, and which realistically went right back to the bag as soon as he avoided it. That being said, I kind of do think that something like that should probably be a dead ball. I mean, he literally launched his bat, and I think Randy deserves some of the blame for that because he has done that way more often than people even realize. When he strikes out, he literally launched his bat. It's probably like the 10th time he's done that with the Mariners. I don't understand why. I don't know if he's, has a forearm or a wrist issue when he swings it a certain way. But obviously I can't blame him for that. That was a brain fart on Julio, no doubt.
Well, let me ask you quickly then about why you think that should be a dead ball. I mean, if it goes fair, if a pitcher, has to deal with like a bat flying at them, wouldn't you think the hitter would just want to throw the bat at them if they could? Like, I know that's that's really skilled. Like, you have to hit the ball and then to be able to throw the bat, in that direction afterwards. We're talking like crazy matrix, like attempt within an attempt of something to like, that is some unbelievable athletic talent if you could pull that off. But I guess you make it still a live play because you want to avoid people just throwing the bat like in any situation, right? Like, I don't know. That's kind of what I see. But like, I guess immediately, like looking at the play, I thought it was a dead ball too, even though I do know the rule that it's not. So
yeah, I just think kind of instinct right away on something like that. Like, the ball wasn't put in play. He struck out already. He wasn't running to first base to, try to get a drop ball. So in my mind, I'm just thinking like the ball's flying at him while he's in foul territory. So in my mind, he's got to get out of the way. He's not going to stand there and just take the hit. You know what I mean? That being said, we don't really see it that often, so I don't really think it's a crazy deal whether the rules like change or anything like that, because it never really happens. Like that was just a big brain fart on Julio just to keep walking and walk just straight away from the bag. I don't know what he was thinking there, but yeah.
I think the laziness that you're talking about, or the lack of focus after that, yeah, I think that's probably more what fans are upset about, as opposed to like, he thought it was a ball. That's fine. And you can kind of lean on like the phrase Julio being Julio in that instance. That is Julio Rodriguez, and I guess he is still young, but comparing him talent wise to like what his contract is and saying that like that doesn't match up just because of that one play, like stop it. Like fans, I think they're overreacting, and I hope you do too.
Oh yeah, I have a whole video tomorrow coming about his inconsistencies, because I think the name to his game going forward just needs to be consistency. Like if he can just find just a consistent 162, obviously there's gonna be slumps, it's baseball, but a 162 where he's just playing his game, not I have my notes in here from like a few years. Like I don't even focus on 2022 because he was so solid from when he came up and debuted through the entire season. But I mean, if you look, okay, in the month of September last year, right, the Mariners were making a playoff push. They were one game short at the end. In the month of September during that playoff push, he hit 233 in 28 games. Not what you need from your best player. He's our best player. He's supposed to be our best player. We signed him to be our best player. He's our Bobby Witt. Whether obviously, Bobby Witt is on another level in my opinion, but I think as of right now, he is our guy. You're supposed to build around him. You're supposed to make the franchise around him. That's why you signed him to, what was it, 12 years, whatever the deal was. But it sounds like
it's like rolling from like 8 to 12 or 15. It can hit several different things. Yeah.
But basically, in his 2023 season, just kind of put in perspective, first 39 games hit 216 with a 94 WRC plus, right? Mm-hmm. Next 88 games, he hits 316, which obviously we know the crazy stretch he went on in August with whatever that was, with a 150 WRC plus. And then, you come to the month of September and he's back down to 233. So it's like, it's just that inconsistency that he's just missing. He just needs to be consistent for a full season.
Well, and somebody that hopefully has helped him out with that approach and being better or more consistent is new interim. I hope it's not interim, but it sounds like he's not going to be taking the job past the rest of this season. But interim hitting coach Edgar Martinez really helping the Mariners turn it around in the last 30 days. I've got a tweet that East Coast M's put out, I think about a week ago. Said some of you are hating on Edgar. Here are the key stats for the Mariners since Edgar became the hitting coach on August 23rd. Victor Robles, I mean, he's just been batting out of his booty at 424 with a 12.12% K rate, 216 WRC plus. Arozarena 271 and a 142 WRC plus. Julio 281, 146 WRC plus. Luke Raley 282, 182 WRC plus. And happy birthday to Luke Raley, having 2 singles and an outfield assist in that Mariners 3-2 win over the Yankees. Him and Cal have been the most consistent players like all year. They've kind of been the ones performing at that clip that you expect, so good on. I will credit Jerry DiPoto for flipping Caballero for Luke Raley. That is a move that worked out, and that is somebody that he identified maybe as like a diamond in the rough that could come into Seattle, and he's been a little bit better than he was in Tampa Bay. But the Edgar Martinez effect that you highlight, and it is absolutely working, you end the tweet saying it's working like it is. What do you think overall of his effect, and specifically like what he's done with the hitters? Do you think it's his ability to communicate better? Do you think I've heard a lot about the simplification of the approach that Edgar's brought to the team, and how important is Edgar going to be to the team going forward, and how hard should they try to retain him next year?
Yeah, I think this is kind of expected. I think when I saw Edgar kind of come on, I knew there would be a change. Whether, it was going to be drastic or not, I think there was definitely going to be a change. I think definitely simplifying was the way to go. I mean, we know, I'm going to give you some more stats because that's kind of what I like to do. I just give stats.
No, I love it.
So when he was the hitting coach from 2015 to 2018, back with the team. Now, mind you, there was different factors. Like you have like prime Mitch Haniger, Nelson Cruz, Robinson Cano, all these guys, Kyle Seager.
Yeah.
So all of these guys definitely make an impact on this. But here's where the offense ranked in those 4 years that he was the coach for. So they were 11th in WAR over that time, 6th in WRC plus, 10th in batting average, and they had the 9th lowest K rate during those 4 years. So we really shouldn't be surprised that Edgar is doing this. He just simplifies the game. He's one of the best hitters all time, in my personal opinion, top 20 in my personal opinion, just overall hitter. He simplifies. Mm-hmm. You can even see Julio. He's been hot since Edgar's been there because he's starting to use right field. He's not trying to pull everything, and when he does, he gets it. You see what you saw against the Rangers for that big 3-run home run. So Edgar just brings that simplify. Brant Brown clearly was overcomplicating a lot of things. Jared DeHart was clearly overcomplicating a lot of things. And you hear players say it, right? But you hear JP talk so highly of someone like Edgar, just how he makes it simple. Go back to simple. Hitting's not simple, but realistically, just do the things that you were always taught. Go the other way with an outside ball. Pull inside pitches. It's very simple when you do it like that.
See ball, hit ball. And that message coming from one of the best hitters of all time in Edgar Martinez, I think is going to be much more and better received than it would be from 28, 29-year-old Jarrett DeHart. Like, I'm not trying to knock the guy personally. Sure, he's a nice guy, but like as a coach, as a major league hitting coach, you are not going to get your players' ears. It's like some 28-year-old dude reading off of stat sheets. I apologize. Like, that's us. Like, that's what we do, you know, as fans. Like, you put us in major league dugouts then and give us jobs. Like, if that's how you want to deliver this stuff, because then maybe we'll do a little bit better. Okay, so to wrap this up, we've gone, like almost 25-ish minutes. This has been really fun. Really appreciate you, T. East Coast M's. I guess the ultimate question, the Mariners after today's win, as we're taping this, 2 games out of the wild card, 3 technically, can the Mariners actually make the playoffs? Do you think they will?
So honestly, this might be kind of a hot take, but the more I sit and think about it, I think they have more of a chance at winning the division than they do getting to the wild card. And I only say that because they don't have any head-to-heads versus the Tigers or the Twins or even the Red Sox for that matter. So they kind of are just pushing it there. They need a lot more to go right versus then you walk into Texas this weekend, you know, I'm going to push it. Try to get a sweep. You can get a sweep. That's perfect. And then you walk into Houston. Hopefully Houston loses some games. You walk into Houston and then it's all in your hands again. So you need to decide, you know, when you go into Houston, are you going to win? Because that's going to decide our year right there. If we go into Houston and lose 2 or 3, that's it. It's wraps. We will never be able to catch up at that point. Maybe the wild card, again, a lot more things have to go right. But personally, I'm not going to sit here and say they are going to make the playoffs because I'd rather just kind of stay even keel instead of getting my hopes up or kind of doing whatever. I'm just going to take it day by day and see what happens and just keep scoreboard watching. I've been watching the Guardians walk off the Twins 2 nights in a row, but of course I wish they would have capitalized on that more by winning last night. But that's really all we can do is just they got to keep winning, and then we just got to hope other teams lose.
Yeah, you're right. I've been saying that actually for the last couple episodes on Bleav In Mariners is that, if you can get within 3 games of Houston by September 23rd, theoretically, you can sweep them and control your own destiny and get into the playoffs that way. And the wild card, you got to worry about what other teams are doing. Not as much with Houston. Yeah, you have a chance to affect that with a bigger stick. So I hear you. Well, T, this has been freaking awesome, dude. Would love to assist you in any way I can, but thank you so much for coming on the Bleav In Mariners podcast. Loved having you, and hopefully we'll be cheering about a Mariners win in the playoffs here come a couple weeks from now.
That'd be nice. I appreciate you having me on, man. This is a lot of fun.
And that is going to do it for this episode of Bleav In Mariners. Make sure to give the podcast a 5-star rating and review, or subscribe to the channel and like the video if you're watching it on YouTube. Appreciate you for tuning in. Hey, if you happen to know a former Mariners player, or you are a former Mariners player that's listening to this podcast and you want a media opportunity, please contact me. Reach out to Bleav. We'll get in touch with you and we'll make it happen. We'd love to bring that perspective on to this podcast and offer up something that I cannot. Thanks again to East Coast M's for coming on this episode of the podcast. Appreciate it. Love his work. But thanks again so much for tuning in, Mariners fans. Stay safe and keep those tridents up. See you soon.